Meetings, calls, kids, dogs, errands, exercise, and all those emails. Who doesn't feel starved for time these days? But a new study suggests that you can feel like you have more time by donating some to others. The research is in the journal Psychological Science. There really are only 24 hours in a day, 7 or 8 of which are ideally spent sleeping. And a time commitment does take time. But researchers found that if people felt like they had done something for others, their perception was that they had gotten more done than the people who killed time, spent time on themselves, or got unexpected free time. And that made them feel like they had more time overall. You don't even have to spend your whole Sunday volunteering. The helping tasks in the study took only about 5 to 15 minutes. They included things like editing a student's essay or writing a note to a sick child. Time donators also felt like they could do more with their time, making them even more willing to give time in the future.
Are we smarter than the dinosaurs? Specifically, are we clever enough to avoid their fate? If we don't want to be blown away by an asteroid, it would help to know what's out there. That's the idea behind the Sentinel mission. Sentinel is an infrared space telescope designed to spot near-Earth asteroids, but it won't be near Earth. It will launch in 2017 or 18 and adopt a Venus-like orbit around the Sun. From there, it will search space for any asteroids that might come dangerously close to Earth. It could double the known count of near-Earth asteroids in a matter of weeks, and with enough warning, we'd have a chance to deflect an inbound asteroid. Sentinel is the brainchild of the B612 Foundation. B612 was the asteroid home of Literature's Little Prince. The group announced their plans for Sentinel on June 28th, but those plans depend on funding. The B612 Foundation is a nonprofit that aims to finance Sentinel through philanthropy. Former NASA astronaut Ed Lu heads the foundation. He says Sentinel needs a few $100 million to get off the ground. That's a lot of cash, but the B612 Foundation might make it. After all, when it comes to fundraising, humans leave the dinosaurs in the dust.
Kids from the ages of 2 to 19 consume about 7 trillion calories in sugar-sweetened beverages per year, according to Steve Gortmacher of the Harvard School of Public Health. He spoke at the Obesity Society annual scientific meeting in San Antonio on September 23rd. 7 trillion is a lot of calories in sugar-sweetened beverages. At, for example, 50 cents per can, it's about $24 billion a year. All those dollars in sugary calories are stoking the childhood obesity epidemic. Currently in the U.S., about 17% of children and adolescents are obese. That's more than 12.5 million kids. And new research in the British Medical Journal suggests that obese children will have much higher risk factors for cardiovascular disease as adults. Even as kids, their hearts are changing shape to look like those of adults at risk for heart disease. But the good news is that simply cutting out about 64 calories a day from kids' diets could start to level out the steep rise in childhood obesity. That's equivalent to less than half a can of most non-diet sodas.
Sweet potatoes contain fiber, vitamin A, and calcium. But the way that scientists think they can make them even more healthful is literally shocking. Researchers found that giving a jolt of electricity to sweet potatoes increased the level of antioxidants known as polyphenols by 60%. The investigators placed sweet potatoes in a solution of sodium chloride. They found that 0.2 amps of direct current gave the potatoes nearly 1.5 times more antioxidants than potatoes that weren't shocked. The research was presented at the National Meeting of the American Chemical Society. It seems that the electric zap stressed the potatoes into producing more polyphenols as a protective mechanism, and the treatment did not sacrifice flavor. Previous research has shown that electrically supercharging white potatoes increases antioxidant levels, so perhaps it's only a matter of time before other fruits and vegetables get shock therapy too.
Icy objects such as comets may have helped start life on Earth by delivering water and carbon-based molecules to the young planet, because putting something on ice doesn't necessarily keep it from changing. A new study finds that even in frigid, deep space environments, simple hydrocarbon molecules can react to become more complex ones. The process even works when temperatures drop to near absolute zero. But just what kind of organic molecules would exist on the icy bodies of a forming solar system? Researchers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, investigated how organic molecules might evolve toward greater complexity, even in the cold of interstellar space. The scientists found that ultraviolet light, which radiates from stars and galaxies, can induce rapid changes in icy hydrocarbon molecules cooled to 5 Kelvin. That's a frosty minus 451 degrees Fahrenheit. The chemical reactions resulted in molecules of more complexity, which is the right direction to go if you want to eventually make amino acids and biological molecules. The study appears in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. It just goes to show, if you really want something in place, you'd better encase it in carbonite.
We sign our names to various documents all the time. Some signatures seal a legal contract. Others pledge us to an action. Now a study finds that when and where someone signs a document can influence the likelihood of them being honest or cheating. Scientists had people sign more than 1,300 auto insurance forms. One group signed at the top of the form, the other at the bottom. And those who signed at the top admitted to nearly 2,500 more miles of usage than those who signed at the bottom, which translated into about a $48 difference in annual premiums. According to the researchers, because the top signers put their names on the document before they were even tempted to fabricate information, they are less likely to act dishonestly. The study is in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Many people routinely deceive themselves to rationalize dishonest behavior. The $345 billion gap between what people should be paying in U.S. taxes and what they claim isn't just due to chronic liars. It also depends on normally honest people stretching the truth. Perhaps having taxpayers sign their forms before filling them out would cut down on that stretching.
You might not know how many calories were in that sandwich, but if you got lunch at the Massachusetts General Hospital cafeteria, you could tell with one glance whether you'd made a healthful choice. Offerings are color-coded. Simply posting calories does not always get consumers to make healthier choices. So, researchers tried something different. Mass General's cafeteria food and beverage options were classified as least, somewhat, or most healthful with red, yellow, or green labels. Green is healthiest. Researchers then tracked some 4,600 employees. About 6 months after the changes were made, the purchases of red label foods decreased by more than 15%, and red beverages dropped by 39%. Green food and drink purchases increased, according to the study in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine. Making healthy food choices easier could especially help the poor and undereducated, the very populations most affected by the obesity epidemic.
The London Olympics are about to begin, and spectators will again be riveted by feats that would have been impossible when the modern Olympics began in 1896. Jaw-dropping records are attainable in part because of advances in material science. New materials have led to equipment like super light and strong vaulting poles and bathing suits that improve the flow of bodies in water. Such developments are detailed in a series of articles in the journal Nature Materials. The scientists say other advances are afoot that build sensors into athletes' clothing for instance, measuring performance in training, or protective gear that repairs itself when damaged. And advances in material science can help Olympians internally as well. Elite athletes may tear cartilage or break bones, but cartilage doesn't have enough blood and cells to mend well, and sometimes bones just can't naturally bridge the break. So scientists are homing in on the best combinations of biocompatible materials, along with growth factors and other compounds, as well as implanted cells and proteins, to help mend what have been until now nearly intractable injuries, so that world-class athletes can push the limits of sports and science.
Interesting sound. I would have guessed a Wild West performer was practicing with a bullwhip while also vacuuming. But no, that sound is apparently produced by the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. Since 2000, researchers at Finland's Aalto University have been collecting audio as part of what's called the Auroral Acoustics Project. Folk tales had long held that the lights also produce odd sounds, but the claims were hard to prove, and some researchers thought that any noises produced by the energetic particles that cause the light show would be far too high in the sky to be heard on the ground. But the latest results indicate that at least some sounds are produced very close to the ground. A setup of 3 ground-based microphones allowed researchers to estimate that the sounds occur perhaps just 70 meters up. The results were just presented at the International Congress on Sound and Vibration in Vilnius, Lithuania. More information about the sounds of the Northern Lights could lead to a more complete understanding of the phenomenon. So if you see an aurora, keep your ears open.
Just like corporations, stars too can engage in mergers and acquisitions. A new study has identified a pair of white dwarf stars heading toward a merger. White dwarfs are the hot, super-dense remnants of spent stars. In a binary system called J0651, two white dwarfs circle each other very rapidly. The binary pairing completes an orbit in less than 13 minutes. And that already rapid orbital dance is speeding up as the two white dwarfs spiral in on each other. Each year, their orbital period shrinks by 0.3 milliseconds. That's actually a pretty dramatic change on astronomical timescales. In about 1 million years, the white dwarfs will get so close that the larger one will start to cannibalize its smaller companion. Before long, the two stars will likely become one. The study appears in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. The tightly wound white dwarf binary should also be radiating gravitational waves, ripples in the fabric of space and time. But today's gravitational wave detectors are not sensitive enough to...
Scientists artificially aged modern paper to reveal the changes on the molecular level. The research is in the journal Physical Review Letters. For 48 days, 3 unbleached paper samples aged rapidly in reactors that simulated different environmental conditions. The researchers then compared the artificially aged samples to the real deal, 3 pieces of paper crafted in 15th century Europe. This technique allowed them to gauge the types and amounts of changes going on. About 90% of the weight of old paper is cellulose, the sturdy material that makes up plant cell walls. But over time, cellulose fibers oxidize. The process modifies parts of various molecules and turns them into what are called chromophores, which absorb light. White paper is white because it reflects all colors of light. Aging paper filled with chromophores reflects wavelengths that make it look yellow. The non-destructive technique used in this study could inform research to preserve and even whiten ancient texts and art, and give paper conservation a brighter outlook. Music, film, and video game makers face a new online digital world, and some are testing a revolutionary pricing system, pay what you want. But a new study finds that when consumers can name their own price, many opt out of buying at all. The study is in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. For the research, tour boat passengers posed for photos. Each boat ride announced a price of $15 per picture, but they then charged either $15, $5, or the option to pay what you want. As expected, the fewest tourists purchased photos when they had to pay full price, but more customers bought photos when they cost $5 than when prices were pay what you want, which could have saved passengers even more. The researchers suggest that choosing to pay less than an announced, lower than expected price made people feel cheap. With choices then limited to spending more money or feeling like a tightwad, potential customers simply opted out of the purchase. So on sea or land, a low set price may catch the most fish. If you enjoy sharing all your likes and dislikes on Facebook, you're definitely not alone. Research finds that broadcasting personal opinions gives people the same sense of reward as earning money. The study is in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Study subjects had their brains scanned while they either talked about their opinions or judged the beliefs of another, and sharing their own point of view stimulated more activity in the reward processing parts of the subject's brains. In another experiment, participants got to choose among reporting their own opinion, judging someone else's opinion, or answering a true or false question. And for each choice, they could earn varying amounts of money. Rather than maximize their winnings by answering the questions that were worth the most cash, people preferred to talk about themselves, even though they sacrificed an average of 17% of their potential earnings to do it. For the participants, sharing personal information was its own reward, which means that people like comedian Patton Oswalt, who tweets photos of what he's having for lunch, probably feel like a million.
Americans still fall short of the recommended daily portions of fruit and vegetables, and kids are notoriously averse to veggies at the school cafeteria. So researchers tested whether visual cues of healthful foods could increase consumption at a grade school with 800 students. First, the scientists determined how many kids put carrots and green beans on their trays, and how much they ate. 3 months later, they did the same analysis, but on the second day, the trays had pictures of carrots and green beans in the trays' compartments. On the day with the photo cues, more than twice as many kids took green beans as on the control day, and more than 3 times as many kids took carrots. Average consumption per student went up as well. The study was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. The researchers note that the effect needs to be tested elsewhere for longer than 2 days, and the amount of veggies eaten still didn't meet the government recommendations. But if pictures of burgers can sell meaty meals,
Carbon dioxide and nitrogen should feed flora. But a 10-year study has found that any initial positive effect on plant growth from climate change may soon disappear. The report is in the journal Nature Climate Change. Researchers transplanted vegetation from 4 grassland ecosystems to lower, warmer elevations. They also modified the precipitation at the transplant sites based on altered rainfall estimates. For the first year, the plants did great, producing more biomass and churning out more oxygen for us. But their productivity went down for the rest of the decade. What happened? Warming did speed up the nitrogen cycle, which should have increased nitrogen's availability as plant fertilizer, but a lot of the nitrogen left the soil through runoff or uptake into the atmosphere. In addition, productive native plants began to lose out to species that thrive at higher temperatures but are less productive than the natives. Warmer temperatures may spur immediate growth, but in the long term, we can't expect plants to get hot.